Okay, guys. So introduction to cryptocurrency and Web3. So I'm going to begin with the original cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is not just the original cryptocurrency, but also the most famous and most well-known. So it will be the most familiar to a general audience. And what I'll try to do is I'll try to explain a little bit about why Bitcoin exists, and then also the dominant image for what Bitcoin is, which is a digital or shared ledger of some kind. I'll then switch over to Ethereum. Ethereum is Bitcoin's main competitor, or really its only competitor. And in Ethereum, we see an evolution away from the money focus of cryptocurrencies toward the idea of a shared world computer. And then finally, we're going to look at something called Web3, where I escalate the difficulty to some extent in order to focus on what is the main or current trends in cryptocurrency, which is this idea of Web3, which is itself an attempt to rebrand crypto along the lines of reinventing the internet or the web, as opposed to simply reinventing money. So that's the broad direction that I'm going to try to go in. So where does all this come from? Well, there is a prehistory that is quite important here. The origins of Bitcoin can be traced back to a group of activists, digital privacy activists, called cypherpunks, so C-Y-P-H-E-R, instead of cyberpunk, like the video game. So cypherpunks into digital privacy activism. And these were people who were active in the 80s, the 90s, and throughout the 2000s as well. So very, very long-term activists. Now, these cypherpunks were interested in how it is impossible when you're online to transact in a way which is anonymous, that there is no financial privacy on the internet. And the reason for this is because in order to transact on the internet, you must go through the ledger, so some kind of record-keeping system of financial transactions that are owned or run by some kind of company or a bank. So a corporation or a company or a bank, you must use their services in order to transact on the internet. And this is something that cypherpunks, who are digital privacy activists, don't like, because of course these companies can then collect that data, build profiles about you, all that kind of thing. So the word for this that cypherpunks tend to use is that the internet and financial activity on the internet is under the control of central authorities. So small groups like companies or banks who control ledgers and then are able to track the movement of funds of individuals. This is the problem that they're trying to address. So in 2008, November 2008, a pseudo-anonymous developer named Satoshi Nakamoto sends an email to this cypherpunk mailing list, which is where they all hang out and talk about these issues. Nakamoto's identity remains to this day unknown, and he hasn't been heard from since December of 2010. He essentially abandons and disappears from the project. So Nakamoto tells these cypherpunks that he's invented a new electronic cash system that is peer-to-peer with no trusted third party. So in this, you have pretty much everything about Bitcoin in a sentence. So Bitcoin is going to be an electronic or digital cash. So electronic, bit of an old school way of putting it. Today, we would say a digital cash. So what he's trying to do is he's trying to introduce a type of money for the internet that is an analog or similar to cash in the real world. So what can you do with cash in the real world? Well, you can transact with people from individual to individual or peer to peer directly, and we can leave no record, no underlying mechanism is going to be recording our transaction, so it doesn't leave any trail, right? So it would be like anonymous, the way that cash can be anonymous, as long as you're, like not being recorded by cameras or something like this. Okay, so we're going to eliminate, or we're going to try to eliminate the idea of that trusted third party or the central authority who controls a ledger and keeps track of all our money by creating an electronic or digital cash for the internet. So the culture that informs Bitcoin is a cypherpunk culture, right? So it's digital privacy activism back in 2008, 2009. That's where Bitcoin originates. The goal of these cypherpunks is to create decentralized digital cash. So to try to create some kind of digital cash equivalent. It's going to be decentralized. So we're not going to rely on centralized companies and banks to keep track of our money system. We're going to do it ourselves. So it's going to be a bit punkish or DIY. We're going to use some techniques. Now, those of you who take my classes in the past or are taking them now will know that I'm doing a radical simplification of how cryptocurrency works here. But I would say if I had to boil it down to the essentials, the techniques that go into Bitcoin are something called peer-to-peer networking, so peer-to-peer, then the infamous blockchain that you've probably heard of, just because people have popularized the term quite a bit. Now, a blockchain has a whole bunch of different characteristics that I could talk about, things like censorship resistance, immutability, and so on. But I'm going to pick one called one characteristic, transparency, but keeping in mind that I'm giving you a very limited perspective, because to discuss all of them would take, normally in a class a few weeks. So we're just going to pick one, the idea that blockchains are transparent, meaning that all the activity that I'm going to be talking about as we go through this talk is public or transparent, right? Everything is going to be super transparent and super public. I'll try to weave that in as we go through. Okay, so this is the Bitcoin peer-to-peer network. This is where the magic sort of happens. Now, if you look at this, what you see is individuals who download a piece of software. So open source volunteer developers. So people who are like cypherpunks, who are interested in digital privacy activism. They collectively work together to produce a software, the Bitcoin software, that users can download. Now, when you download that software and run it, what you're doing is you're joining a network of other people who are interested in the sending and receiving of a unit of account called Bitcoins, the currency that's worth, a huge amount of money. So what we've agreed to do in this Bitcoin peer-to-peer network is to follow a rule set or a protocol governing the sending and receiving of that money, right? So that's what the code is actually encapsulating that you download. So it says things like a transaction must be in X or Y type of form, right? So it's just the basic infrastructural rules that are put into the software that you then download. Now, the interesting thing about when you look at this network, you'll notice that there is no center to it. It's a decentralized or peer-to-peer network. Nobody in this system is going to have that same role as a bank or a company who is maintaining the ledger from a position of power or authority, being the single person who updates the ledger. That doesn't exist in Bitcoin. Instead, we're going to maintain a ledger, a money system. We're going to keep track of the balances ourselves in a completely decentralized way. So we're never going to have anybody in the position of the center. We're going to do this as a collective, collaborative effort. So what are we collectively and collaboratively doing? Well, we're going to update a ledger. So we all have a copy of a shared ledger. One of the characteristics of this means that everyone has a copy, meaning everything in the network is public or transparent. Now, we don't have like our actual identities associated with our accounts, which means we're also going to be anonymous. So we have this nice paradox where our identities are anonymous, but the ledger is completely public, right? So it's an interesting situation. Okay, so how does this work? Again, I want to stress that this is a simplification. Normally, this would take me maybe 2 or 3, maybe even 4 lectures to fully get across to a classroom, but I'm going to try to do my best. So when transactions are sent in the Bitcoin peer-to-peer network, there's a specialist class of users known as miners, M-I-N-E-R-S. You might have heard of them, the guys who use those machines to mine for Bitcoins. So when they hear transactions being sent, what they're going to do is every 10 minutes, they're going to update a page of the ledger, right? So every 10 minutes, our ledger is going to be updated, but it's going to be updated in a very interesting way. So the miners, all of them working on their own version of the ledger during these 10-minute windows, right? So each individual miner is going to construct their own personal version of this ledger at the same time. Oh, sorry. So each individual miner is like working to construct the next page of the ledger, and they're all doing this simultaneously. So they're all kind of like roughly building in this 10-minute window what they think the updating of the balances should look like. So they're seeing transactions come in. They collect them into a next page of the ledger, which in Bitcoin is called a block. So each block represents 10 minutes of the updating necessary of the ledger. So they put the transactions into the block, and then they will also engage in a race to find a puzzle solution. So we can't accept everybody's version of the ledger, right? We can't have every single person's slightly different version of the ledger, because a ledger is consistent, right? It's a single ledger with a single source of truth. So we need a mechanism to pull one of those miners, one of those blocks out from the collection of the people. And then we say this person's block represents the next page in the ledger. And so over the course of 10 minutes, each of the miners will engage in the race to find a puzzle solution. It takes about 10 minutes to find this puzzle solution. The puzzle, the nature of it is very difficult to understand. It involves cryptographic hashing, so cryptocurrencies. That's where we take data, put it through a cryptographic hashing or a blender, let's say, and that will produce a kind of output. In the Bitcoin system, the first person to find the right kind of output, their block gets selected, and they get to be the next block in the ledger, right? So we have blocks that are chained together, each of these representing 10-minute periods of the current state of the ledger, going all the way back to the original block. So this is why we call it a blockchain. So a blockchain is a record-keeping system. It's a way to keep a record, in this case of a ledger, where we draw the next update, where we draw the next page in the ledger or the next block from a decentralized pool of people. So selecting different people each time, rather than having a single central authority in command of the ledger. And I know that's a lot to wrap your head around. It would normally take me a long time to get across. The important takeaway is that there is no central authority who's like updating the ledger. It's a collaborative effort where we found a way to kind of cleverly pull one person out at each time who wins the puzzle and their block gets added, or they're the ones who update the ledger next. Okay, so that's the hard part sort of out of the way. The next thing I want to talk about is Ethereum. So Bitcoin, it does one thing and one thing well, which is allows you to send and receive a money called Bitcoin from user to user. And that's basically all Bitcoin does. It's pretty perfect in that regard. It's been running for 13 years. It's never had any downtime. It's never been manipulated, all that good stuff. So Bitcoin is a pretty good network. It's just that it's very blunt in its instrumentation, just sending and receiving money. In 2013, a young developer called Vitalik Buterin first conceptualizes an alternative, which doesn't actually launch until 2015. And this alternative is called Ethereum. And so what Vitalik Buterin introduces is the idea that instead of simply recording a ledger, so instead of simply recording the movement of money, why don't we record the updating of a shared world computer? So the image moves away from being a ledger recording money to being a computer that's going to record applications or programs that get executed the same way on your phone or on your computer, your home computer, except this computer is going to be shared globally. So we're all going to be running a copy of this computer. So the culture of Ethereum is more like a hacker engineer one. It's more focused on public goods, like civic-minded, producing infrastructure for society. The goal of the Ethereum culture is to create a decentralized world computer. So our computer is going to be a globally distributed one. It's going to be transparent. We're going to be able to see all the activity of all the applications running on it. And the techniques we're going to use in this case will be peer-to-peer again and blockchain. Everything is the same, right? Everything is the same as Bitcoin up until this point. And then there's another dimension that comes into it, which is called smart contracts. And this is the thing that people really get tripped up on. They find it really hard to understand, but it's something you shouldn't worry about as much as it kind of sounds more complicated than it is. So this is the Ethereum peer-to-peer network, right? So instead of having users downloading a piece of software with a bunch of rules, and we're collectively sharing and hosting a decentralized ledger that we update in a decentralized way, so plucking a different person out each time who gets to add the block to the single canonical chain, we're instead going to be hosting a shared world computer, right? So we're the global state of a computer, which is going to actually execute every 10 to 13 seconds. So it's much faster than Bitcoin's. Okay, so this is the Ethereum blockchain, right? So more or less, again, everything is the same, except if we look at the block, it's not just going to contain the transactions. So there is a currency in Ethereum that you can send and receive to users called Ether, but there's also going to be these little small applications called smart contracts that developers will create, same as an app on your phone, except they're going to send that application to live on the Ethereum world computer. And then people are going to be able to interact with those applications on that world computer. And the way that they do that is they send the currency to trigger the code to execute on that computer. Sounds totally science fiction, but this is the normal state of things in cryptocurrency. It's all these different terms which can throw you off, but really, right, it's a world computer executing an application, but it's happening in this very global, transparent way. And that's what intrigues people quite a bit. So this is the definition that I want to really emphasize. So the smart contract terminology, it says that it is very crucial here. A lot of people, they get confused here, right? Because smart contract makes it sound like there's some sort of autonomous artificial intelligence aspect going on here. And they also see the word contract, which makes them think of legality. But as the saying goes, smart contracts are neither smart nor contracts. There's nothing about artificial intelligence involved. There's nothing to do with legality. That's just a misnomer. The creator of Ethereum has suggested that it was just a very badly named, terminology. So what are smart contracts? They're simply applications like the application on your phone, like a word, the word processor, or on your laptop or whatever. The only difference is that the computer that we're running these applications on happens to be shared globally. The global state of the computer is visible for all participants to interact with. So what people are going to do is they're going to leverage the unique properties of a shared global computer, let's say transparency, for example, in order to, like when they're creating their programs, they're going to try to involve the idea that transparency is a part of this. Okay, so 1 second. All right, so let's get away a little bit from the technical overview, and I want to shift more toward the idea of the actual practical activities of cryptocurrency and Web3 as they really exist in the real world. So a lot of people, their stumbling block is the technical understanding. Most people who are involved in cryptocurrency are not even doing that. They're involved in a much more pragmatic way. And I want to emphasize this. So let's turn to Web3 culture. What is Web3 culture? Well, it essentially represents the more liberal or progressive wing of cryptocurrency, right? So the people who are a little bit more left-wing, a little bit more liberal. So traditional cryptocurrency cultures like Bitcoin are very libertarian, pro-capitalism, etc. But Web3 culture, it's a little bit more progressive. And their goal is to take on the Web 2.0 experience. So the experience of the internet by people like the FANGs, so Google, Amazon, etc. Those companies who take your data and then build profiles about you. So they want to reinvent the web away from that centralized mindset where companies dominate the web and introduce a decentralized web experience where you're actually more in control, the owner of your own data, called the ownership economy. Now, the techniques that are used by Web3 are super science fiction-y. So bear with me. There's no way that I can simplify this stuff anymore. The nature of the beast is that we are in the process of creating this new futuristic technology set. They come with these really complicated names, and it's not like me trying to introduce the idea of these impressive terms. This is just what they're called. So don't worry too much about them, about the terminology. So the techniques are DAOs, or decentralized autonomous organizations. Those are used for blockchain coordination, social coordination. I'll give an example. Then there's something called decentralized finance, which is how you can build your own economy on the blockchain. You can create your own token to fund your project. So there will also be a decentralized finance aspect to this. There's also NFTs, something very familiar to a lot of the young users, known as crypto natives. This is non-fungible tokens or blockchain art. So we can store artwork on the blockchain. So we essentially have the three elements of a social experience. We have the ability to socially coordinate, we have the ability to have our own money, and we have the ability to create art. So we can have a full experience of the internet, but in a new decentralized kind of way. So this is a small cluster of what the Ethereum ecosystem looks like. So if you look down the bottom, that's the Ethereum world computer, let's say, right, with the yellow. And then there's this huge economy of projects that are built on Ethereum. In fact, there's thousands and thousands of them at this point. So all I'm showing you here are the ones that I normally would say somebody will probably encounter as a newcomer. As you become deeper and deeper into it, you'll discover all kinds of new things. So there is this huge amount of smart contract applications that exist on Ethereum. I just want to show you this because I'm going to focus on one or two projects, and I want to emphasize that I'm giving you a small slice of what's possible today. The one I'm going to use to illustrate everything is this one right in the middle called Metamask, which is a wallet or a way that we can interact with the Ethereum world computer. So this is my Web 2.0 experience, right? I'm on my Twitter account. This is just my everyday Twitter account where I talk about cryptocurrencies and all that kind of thing. Now, this experience of a a Web2 experience is where I'm using the centralized service of a company, in this case, Twitter, right? So the Twitter company is providing me with the infrastructure that I can then, and then giving me some kind of service, right? That's the old Web 2.0 centralized internet, and Web3 is going to try to introduce a new decentralized version of this. Now, up in the corner, you'll see the Metamask, right? You'll see that little browser extension. That's going to be my wallet that I use to interact with the Webtree or Ethereum world computer. So you can imagine when I'm going to be interacting with the websites that you're going to see, that's kind of like my way in. That's my little wallet that allows me to interact with all those applications that I built on Ethereum. Okay, so this is an example of a decentralized autonomous organization. It's called Friends with Benefits. A bit of a cheeky name, of course. And the idea of this group is that they are a collective of people. So Friends with Benefits is the ultimate cultural membership powered by a community of our favorite Web3 artists, operators, thinkers, bound together by shared values and shared incentives, FWB. So this is a group of people who have formed as a decentralized autonomous organization, right? What does that mean? It sounds extremely science fiction-like, but really it actually just means that they're a community that are going to organize themselves using blockchain logic or blockchain tools. So mostly it's just a community of creators, producers, artists, people like myself who are researchers into like cultural stuff. And we meet together in a chat room. We organize like different events, but we are also going to use blockchain technology in order to improve our experience of being a social club or a social chat room. So we're going to use these mechanisms to really like do more than say like just a normal group that meets and like is a chat room, say. So that's a decentralized autonomous organization, sometimes called a chat room with a bank account. Now, in order to participate, I'm going to need the token called the FWB token. So the Friends with Benefits token is going to give me access to this community because ownership or participation in a DAO means the ownership of the associated token. So how do I get this token? How do I join this decentralized autonomous organization? Well, what I'll do is I'll go to a decentralized finance protocol, right? So this is a smart contract that was sent to the Ethereum blockchain, and then users can interact with that smart contract that exists on this global world computer, right? So it's almost like we're just using a computer, but at a step back, not my phone, not my computer, but a world computer that I can interact with. Now I connected this world computer using my MetaMask here. So up in the corner, I've made a little screenshot that shows a little bit more. In my case, I do use the domain name Solarpunk Lab. So that's just my username, but you don't have to do that. You can keep yourself completely anonymous. I just choose to use this for teaching purposes. Okay, so what do I do with decentralized finance? I can exchange from any token on the Ethereum blockchain. So any token that was created on that world computer can be instantaneously swapped with any other token. So if I've got Ether, the native currency of Ethereum, I could swap that for Friends with Benefits token or Shiba Inu, some of you may know, or USDC, which is a dollarized version of like a cryptocurrency, and so on. So in the Ethereum ecosystem, the finance ecosystem, you can immediately move between any token. So this gives us this real frictionless experience where we're moving money around without giving any identifying information, without feeling the need to go through like long delays as we wait for bank account withdrawals, all that stuff. In DeFi, that's all gone. Everything is done instantaneously. Nobody needs to know your information. Nobody needs to know your name. It is what we call permissionless finance. So finance that the cypherpunks or people like myself would believe should be the case, that nobody should need to have, give up information just to transact with other people. Okay. So the next thing to look at is the Discord. So this is a Web 2.0 bottleneck. So there are points of centralization that still exist in Web3. So when I get my 75 FWB tokens, they're in my MetaMask wallet. I then go to their Discord. This is the chat room with a bank account. And then I am verified, I have the token. So now I'll be able to talk with all the other members, but I can also engage in governance, right? So this is an interesting thing. I'm going to be able to vote on the direction of the project. We're going to be able to coordinate using that world computer blockchain. So for example, here is Snapshot. Snapshot is a smart contract that exists on the Ethereum blockchain. And what it does is it allows members of communities who own a associated token to vote on the direction of the community. So every so often we might have something like, okay, we propose, or a member proposes, that we should go to an event in Miami Basel. It's an art event. And we should create artworks, NFT artworks, and we're going to put them around the event in Miami. And then people are going to hear about Friends with Benefits and join the community. And this should help the token go up a little bit as well, because there'll be more demand for the token. So in order for this to be facilitated, we must put this to a vote, because this proposal is asking for money from the community's treasury, because the community of a DAO will have its own money, its own treasury that it uses to fund events. And so we put this to a blockchain vote. After the person has outlined their proposal, their vision, we will then connect our MetaMask wallet on Snapshot, so connecting to that Ethereum world computer. And then the person who's voting, we're able to see the vote here, yes or no. And then at some point, the vote will stop and we can verify the results in the Ethereum world computer, because everything that's happening on it is public or transparent. So we're leveraging the idea of transparency to coordinate ourselves as a social community. Okay, so moving on to a more fun part, or at least a part that I've found increasingly popular with younger people in particular, is non-fungible tokens, or NFT blockchain art. So something I'm particularly fond of myself as well. So in order to understand NFTs, to understand this part of the Web3 contemporary, like reinventing the web experience, the first thing that always has to be done is, okay, what the hell does like non-fungible mean, right? That's the thing that people first always ask. So fungible, it just means that whatever it is exchangeable like for like. So a dollar is the same as any other dollar. A Bitcoin is the same as any other Bitcoin. A barrel of oil is the same as any other barrel of oil, assuming all things are okay with them. So it's just goods that like don't have any different characteristics. They're exchangeable like for like. If I'm in a shop, I don't really want this specific euro back. Just give me a euro back. They're the same thing. So that's a fungible token. But then the other thing that we can create on the Ethereum world computer is going to be non-fungible tokens. Now, non-fungible tokens also come in sets of things. So for example, a real world example of a non-fungible token would be a collection of concert tickets, right? So let's say we have Justin Bieber concert, they've got 50,000 people who bought tickets. The tickets are all the same. They all belong to the same class of things, right? They're all tickets to a Justin Bieber concert, but each ticket is not exactly alike, because one of them will be very close to the stage, one of them will be very far back, right? So they're not exchangeable like for like, even though they're roughly the same thing. So that's what we mean by non-fungible. We're creating many of the same thing, but where there's unique characteristics that make some of them more desirable than others. Same with a house on a street, right? You might live on the same road, but because you get sunlight here, your house is more appealing to you, as opposed to someone across the road who decorates the house differently and so on. They're all houses on the same street, but they have different characteristics that appeal to different people. We do the same thing with non-fungible tokens on the Ethereum blockchain. We create a class of things like collectibles. So similar to people who collect stamps, people who collect posters, football cards, the exact same thing is going on. We create a class of things for people to collect, usually in the form of what's known as profile pictures. So let's say down here we have CryptoKitties, famous cryptocurrency project. There is a huge number of, sorry, not huge number. Let's say, I'm going to simplify this. This isn't the exact number, but there are 10,000 CryptoKitties. Each CryptoKitty has its own unique attributes, but they're all CryptoKitties, right? So they've all got like different color skins. They've got like different eyes, all that kind of stuff. So that people like to collect and try to find the rarer ones. So the exact same mindset as someone who collects anything else, really. Okay, so to give you an example of an NFT project and how you might interact with an NFT project, I'll go with Mooncat's Rescue. This is from 2017. This makes it extremely early. It's one of the earliest NFT or non-fungible token projects on the Ethereum blockchain. I think it's like the third or fourth like earliest project. So what happens in Mooncats is they have created essentially a game on the Ethereum blockchain where there's an orphanage on the moon, right? There's an orphanage on the moon, but the orphanage has cats, right? They're called moon cats. And so your job is to rescue the cats from the orphanage on the moon, so moon cats. Now, in order to make this game, the developers simply create, first of all, they create a smart contract. So they create like an application to run on the Ethereum blockchain that simply creates instances of little collectible cats with different traits, right? So all they're doing is putting a token that you can buy on the Ethereum blockchain, and that represents the image of a moon cat or a Cryptopunk or a Bored Ape, all these different projects that exist. So in order to get the cat, when you rescue the cat, You send Ether to the smart contract. It transfers the ownership over to your wallet that you now have in your Metamask, right? So everything is being done through this Metamask world computer kind of experience. Then you can also transfer the cats to other people and so on and so on. You can see the logic of how this goes. So that's your standard collectible non-fungible token. Now, non-fungible tokens are extremely collectible and expensive, especially at the blue chip tier. This is Bored Ape Yacht Club, currently the most famous like NFT project. It's outpaced CryptoPunks recently. So in the last few weeks, we've had purchases from Eminem, we have Jimmy Fallon, Paris Hilton, et cetera, et cetera. A whole bunch of like famous people, a bunch of rappers, you know, they all collect these projects. This is the same idea, a non-fungible token. Developers, they create a smart contract. The smart contract creates 10,000 of these apes. You can send Ether to the contract to buy an ape, and then different people trade the apes, and then they go crazy about trying to get the best one. These are currently at a floor price. So the cheapest Bored Ape that you can buy now is around 250,000 US dollars. The most expensive CryptoPunk ever sold is $11.8 million. So these are, if you can get this right, if you're early, you can find something pretty spectacular, but there's a lot of crappy projects that exist as well. So we're not really encouraging people to get into it. Suffice to say that there is obviously a status or prestige thing going around NFTs in 2021, 2022. Now, a lot of people, they basically don't really seem to understand what an NFT is. So a classic thing you'll hear is the idea of the right clicker. So somebody who just like saves an image, because they misunderstand the image for the NFT. So an NFT isn't the image. The image can be hosted anywhere. It can be hosted on a different website entirely. It's not very often hosted on the blockchain. What people are actually buying is the token that exists on the blockchain, because cryptocurrency people, not everybody, but cryptocurrency people believe that if something is on that blockchain, transparently viewable and verifiable as yours, that's where the value comes from. It's not the image that you right click and save. It's the NFT that establishes ownership. And that's what people are really buying. And if you can understand that, then it becomes like easy to understand. The other thing is that usually ownership of an NFT gives you access to a community. That the part that's overlooked of simply owning an image isn't all that important. It's that you own a certain NFT that then gives you access to a kind of community of like-minded people who get together and join, let's say, a DAO or whatever it is that you happen to do. So this is the Bored Ape Yacht Club ecosystem. If you have one of those NFTs, you can go into this world and hang out with other people with those NFTs. Now, maybe it's not the most exciting thing in the world for everybody, but it's exciting enough for the people who, you know, own them, that really they feel that like having this prestige item, meeting other people who have like Bored Apes is like attractive to them. Not doesn't mean that everybody's interested in it, but I often think that they're a misunderstood community and they get a lot of hassle for essentially being people who want to join communities and collect things. Seems pretty benign to my eyes. Now, that being said, and I think we're coming to an end now, so like any kind of Q&As that might be coming in would be around now. So I've given like something similar to a very positive picture of cryptocurrency so far and Web3 and all that kind of thing. But I must emphasize that I first got into cryptocurrency primarily through the study of like cybercrime and scams and all that kind of thing. And in crypto/Web3, there is a huge amount of scams, con men, and criminality at work. Now, if you're interested in the more legitimate projects like Bitcoin and Ethereum and say the top 10 cryptocurrencies, you're probably in a pretty safe area. If you're reading like the mainstream news, CoinDesk, Decrypt, Ledger Insights, these websites that are like have like serious journalists working for them, or Bloomberg on crypto, then you're probably going to be okay. But there is what I call in my work the trashmo. So the trashmo essentially is all of those YouTube influencers like the Sun, the Express, they have pages on crypto where they promote what are essentially really, really low quality projects that are trying to get you to part with your money. You're going to get rich in the next week or two, that kind of thing. Those kind of cryptocurrencies, you must get away from the mindset of get rich quick, because nobody in crypto since 2009 with Bitcoin has got rich quick. That's not really how it works. Instead, you must become somebody who studies and takes seriously the industry if you want to do well, let's say, on the markets, if that's what you're interested in. So the trash mode, if you can get past it, If you don't fall into the moat with all the crappy projects, then there is something really interesting there, but you have to be very careful and very savvy and be patient as well. Also, cryptocurrency is extremely volatile. In a week ago, the crypto markets crashed 30%. Morgan Stanley released a report saying that this is the 15th time that something similar has happened to this, like a bear market, meaning there can be corrections in crypto where we go from 69,000 US dollars in November down to around, I think it's, so I'm not sure the exact number, maybe 34,000 at the moment, right? So those sharp corrections can happen. So it's not just number go up, you will also experience number go down, and very, very harshly. So if you're interested in cryptocurrency, you're going to have to be someone, again, who's patient and understands that corrections are the norm, as that JP Morgan Stanley report says, that the normality of crypto is volatility, not number go up. Okay, so all that being said, I am generally positive about cryptocurrency. I believe it is a remarkable economic, social, and cultural achievement. An open source project created by digital privacy activists by a pseudonymous developer back in 2009 suddenly finds itself where we have like the Ethereum blockchain doing transaction volumes of 11.6 trillion. We have 21 million Metamask users, so people who are using that wallet to interact. We also have an overall market capitalization of 1.7 trillion. And to my mind, this is something that needs to be taken seriously. Whether we were dismissive of it a few years ago, as many people were, it's only in the last 2 years that I felt a sea change. Up until that point, working on this was like working on something extremely obscure. But these days, I think things have changed. So we need to consider cryptocurrency just part of the story. So in conclusion, Bitcoin is a decentralized ledger. It's trying to create a digital cash, right? So that's what Bitcoin is trying to do. Then we have Ethereum, where we introduced this more of an idea of a world computer that you can interact with using your MetaMask wallet, for example. This enables this new Web3 culture, which is trying to introduce a decentralized experience of the web, where you have more ownership of what you're doing, whether that's through social coordination using decentralized autonomous organizations, whether that's swapping tokens using decentralized finance, or whether that's collecting art using NFT or non-fungible tokens. If you're interested in this kind of thing, you want to explore it further, but you don't really want to like take classes or whatever, we do have a group called the UCDAO, the UC Decentralized Autonomous Organization, ucdao.com, that will get you to the Discord link, and we have talks every so often. That's open and welcome to anybody, regardless of where they're from. That's
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. We have some questions coming through. So one of the questions is, would it be possible to elaborate on the concept of gas fees that are associated with Ethereum network and the functioning reading behind them?
Yeah. So gas is one of the key differences between Bitcoin and Ethereum, is this idea of gas. So if you want to send a transaction to another Bitcoin user and the block is full, right? So like that little block that we saw is full of transactions, right? So there's like too many people trying to get into a block. At some point, at the 1 megabyte limit, the block will be full and it won't accept any other transactions. Now you can choose to pay a higher transaction fee to get ahead of other people, right? You can jump the queue like you're at Disney World with a fast pass by paying a higher fee, and then you'll get into the block faster. In Ethereum, there's a similar concept going on, but it's because it's not just, we're not just sending transactions, we're actually executing computation. We have a different idea where the block gets full when a certain amount of computation is reached, right? So the block is limited by the amount of computation that can be done. So basically just to stop the world computer from, stalling or clogging because there's like too much computation happening at that one point. So what you do instead in this regard is when you're paying to make some kind of transaction in Ethereum, what you're doing is you're paying the computational cost, right? So you're paying a little bit of gas to execute a certain number of steps. So if you want to make a transaction, your transaction fee will be relatively low. If you want to create a smart contract, like let's say you started an actual non-fungible token blockchain art project, like that will involve way more computation, creating all the artwork. So your gas fee will be much higher. Now, what you're probably getting at is why do gas fees cost so much? And that's simply because demand for the Ethereum block space is so extreme. There are so many people using the Ethereum blockchain. There's so many projects being launched like every 10 seconds, like, people are creating new projects. And so every time that happens, people have to pay higher gas fees in order to get included in the block, and it drives up the price of gas. And that's led to a situation that I don't really want to get into here, but basically you probably, for that specific user, I would suggest looking into something called layer 2 solutions, where you can do off-chain or like side chain transactions if you're looking to reduce your gas fee.
Okay, there are a few questions on NFTs, so I will just choose one. I think it will cover them all. Are NFTs only held on Ethereum blockchain, or can these be held in any other blockchain?
It depends on the blockchain. So there are 10,000 cryptocurrencies, or 10,000 like cryptocurrency blockchains. So they have different features and characteristics. I generally take the approach that it's best to focus on the top two when I'm teaching or giving talks, so Bitcoin and Ethereum, but there are many, many different options. So you can't create NFTs on Bitcoin at scale. There are like very rare historical examples of people who experimented with like very simplified NFTs, but that's something that most people will never encounter. But any blockchain that's similar to Ethereum, they call them Ethereum killers, where they're trying to do, they're basically trying to compete with Ethereum by being a world computer. Those blockchains, like examples would be Solana, would be Cardano, or Polkadot. There's also the possibilities of collecting NFTs. So Solana has a very healthy NFT ecosystem. The problem is simply that there's more prestige of being on the Ethereum blockchain. So they do exist, but you might find it harder to sell the artwork because less people are on those chains.
Okay, thank you. I think our time is almost up, so maybe that will be the last question. Where do you see cryptocurrency ending up, given the regulatory bodies are not willing to embrace it and see it as a threat due to transaction anonymity, organized crime? Can you see any change in operation to bring it to the mainstream and satisfy regulations?
Yeah, I think this is a fundamental kind of misunderstanding of the cryptocurrency mindset. The end goal of cryptocurrency or Web3 is not to be accepted by the mainstream. It's not to be, as I would put it, to be gentrified and accepted and basically being like harnessed and brought in. The idea is to create something so attractive, parallel to what exists, that people eventually switch over. So the audience of cryptocurrency is not regulators. It's like normal everyday users, retail investors, people who want to join DAOs, creators, and attracting those people so that there's so many of us involved in this like experiment that the regulators basically would be regulating everybody at some point. So it's more about the idea of building spaces that are so large that they are that the regulatory bodies simply have to accept that the sea change has happened.
Okay. Do you have, I think we have time for one final question. It's for Kian here. He says, hi, Paul, I really enjoyed the talk and I'm really interested in the potential of Web3 and DAOs. As an academic involved in other field, pharmacy, could you comment on how large and crypto Web3 community is in Ireland and how best to reach out and connect with it?
Yeah, so the reason why this UCDAO is sort of thrown out there is that the Irish cryptocurrency scene is pretty fragmented. So if you go to like London, Berlin, or any kind of like different major city, so in Friends with Benefits, that decentralized autonomous organization, they have a list of cities, and it's basically like every European city except Dublin has a strong presence, a strong cryptocurrency community. Ireland doesn't really have that. The closest thing right now is probably this little kind of group. It's definitely being impacted by the pandemic. Up until that point, we were kind of on the way to building something with meetups, all that kind of thing, but it's really become very hard to do things since then. So I would say, yeah, probably the best way is to go through this ucdao.com and then try to connect. So it's our idea is that it would basically be a chat room specifically for Irish people to try long-term rebuild the community that was lost because of the pandemic.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'm just conscious of time, so we should wrap up now. That was very interesting and informative session, Paul, so thank you very much.